Hello again, I'm Ruth, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 animated tales of the world. The Animated Tales of the World is a series which ran between 2001 to 2004, with 39 episodes spanning over 3 seasons. Each episode is a classic tale from a different country, with an art and animation style inspired by that country. At Soyuzmultfilm, also known as Russian Disney, some of the old hands wanted to collaborate with international studios, so they created an offshoot called Christmas films, which is really difficult to look up because you just get films like Elf pop up. But the international studio that they ended up collaborating with was S4C, the Welsh television channel. They created beautiful animations of Shakespeare, the Bible, the Canterbury Tales. I think the most child-friendly is the Animated Tales of the World, and it won 2 Primetime Emmys. So here we go. My 5th favourite story is The Tyrant and the Child from Burkina Faso. This was a really interesting story because it deals with mental illness. The king seems to be experiencing psychosis with hallucinations of inanimate objects turning into monsters that attack him. His eyes go red to indicate when he's experiencing this. The story is quite progressive in giving sympathy to the tyrant. He admits that he's scared the elders will get rid of him if they know he has these hallucinations, so he decides to get rid of them first. However, he is mainly portrayed as a tyrant, showing abuse to his beasts. They look kind of like panthers, but I can't identify the species, and constantly demanding that his people do stuff for him. There's a bit of humour because he's so big that he tries to get through the door, and he gets stuck in the palace door, so he makes a sort of squeezing sound as he gets out. It's also a bit like Scooby-Doo when the tyrant's beasts are chasing the elders out of the village, and you see them all hurrying off the screen one way, and then immediately hurrying the other way. The king's female servant, who seems to have a nice relationship with him in a way because she scolds him, tells him he's being cruel, and then goes off and tells Rago about the king's mental illness. Otherwise, though, this feels very high stakes because with just the children left, a really bad way to continue to have a strong society, he demands that they build him a palace and that Rago brings him something that can move but isn't alive, an impossible task. However, Raogo and the other children have secretly been keeping the elders alive away from the village in caves because obviously they weren't so keen on the idea of killing their parents. His elderly father has made a kind of snake scarecrow out of rope, and this Raogo is able to use to trick the king, using his hallucinations against him. I do feel a bit uncomfortable about the fact that they defeat the king by making him think that he's seeing the ghosts of the ancestors, but at the same time he did want to massacre the elders. The beasts are really loyal to him and follow him into the bush where he dies. There isn't really a song but a kind of chant sung by the children, which is really beautiful, and at the end they all have a dance to drums. The art style is like the lovely African masks and statues from tribes with highlights of red, yellow and white. The models are decorated with speckled shells and rings on their thin necks. My 4th favourite tale is the English story Caporushes. In what looks like the 1830s, a very needy upper-class English father goes King Lear on his daughters, asking them how much they love him. The 2 elder daughters know where their bread's buttered and flatter him, saying how much they superlatively love him. But the youngest one, who looks most like their mother from the family portrait, with red hair, is honest and says she loves him as much as meat needs salt. He's really outraged and disowns her, throwing her out of the house. But I like to think that it's his age confusing him because he later regrets this and goes out looking for her. The 2 elder girls don't seem to care at all that she's gone, but at the same time they've been brought up to believe that love is given for reward, so you can't really blame them. So she goes out knowing that she's homeless and has nowhere to go, and she sees a bittern in the rushes and decides to follow suit. So she makes herself a garment out of rushes, and I think that the bird pendant that she wears throughout the animation is of a bittern to symbolise her freedom when she leaves her father's house. This has very much been a story of riches to rags to riches, and becomes particularly like Cinderella when she begs to get a job as a kitchen serf at a large house. She secretly goes upstairs, taking off her rushes to reveal her upper-class clothes in order to dance at balls with young master, even though she's supposed to be staying in the kitchens. And he falls in love with her, even though I'm pretty sure she'd smell after not washing for 3 days, and is very upset when he can't find her. But eventually they find each other, and at the wedding feast she deliberately leaves salt off the meat, which makes her father cry, and reveals that she did in fact love him because meat very much does need salt. I think the decoration on the model's pastel dresses with the lace is really beautiful. I don't like the song so much. I think it serves to show what she's thinking when she's dancing with young master, but I think it serves better as the theme. My third favourite tale is The Three Sisters Who Fell into the Mountain. I like this Norwegian tale because it is type 311 of the Arne Thompson UFA Index, Rescue by the Sister. But it is not just any sister who rescues them. It is the youngest of three sisters, and I'm the youngest of three sisters as well, so I like to think that if my two sisters were captured by a troll, then I'd be able to rescue them along with my trusty hen sidekick, though I don't think I've seen a hen fly quite as high as Mai's hen can in real life. I've just noticed in fairy tales that often the youngest of either three sisters or three brothers comes up trumps because they don't make the mistakes of the elder two. And in this story, Kari, then Mari, then Mai all go looking for their hen into the mountain. And Kari and Mari refuse to be the troll's sweetheart, so he gets very angry and turns them into stone and then throws them down a pit. Mai is able to watch Mari make this mistake, having taken off her shoes to witness this, so she's already showing how clever she is, and then she agrees to be his sweetheart when he asks her, even though she looks about 10, and she continues to cleverly manipulate him into not only showing her how to turn her sisters back from stone, but also taking them, now not stone, back to their mother. I always found the mother in this tale really annoying because she basically sits around being ill. They're pressing her to eat stuff, but she's like, oh no, I'm too ill to eat. But when they give her the only egg that they have, she's like, oh, if I have to. So that's basically why the youngest daughter ends up having to save everyone, because the mother's kind of useless. But I like this tale because it has cartoonish humour. In when the hen wakes up and sees the troll, she immediately turns back into a faint. And also it's quite live action at the same time. You get close-ups of the models' faces and it's almost like seeing an actor's face with the detail of expression. I'm quite glad they went in the Hobbiton direction of turning the girls into stone rather than the old dame and her hen, the original tale, which is very similar to the Grimm's brothers' tale, The Fitcher's Bird, where there's quite a lot of mutilation. So I'm glad they made it less bloody. And also the music is really beautiful. It captures the bizarre nature of the tale. My second favourite tale is Raven Steals the Daylight from Alaska. They really keep the greedy trickster character of Raven. He is only getting the light for the people because he thinks that they'll be so grateful that they'll give him their food so he won't have to rob it. He goes through the hole in the sky to where the Sky Chief lives. As a shapeshifter, Raven tries turning into a spider first, but the Sky Chief's daughter carries him out of the house on her hand, which is much braver than I would be. And then he tries to be a fish and gets swallowed by her as she drinks. There is an immaculate conception which the Sky Chief family seem to accept without further investigation, and she goes off with her many aunts for the birth. The Sky Chief's daughter doesn't seem to have been told that babies cry a lot because she thinks this is really awful, and all the family members try and stop the baby crying. As the Sky Chief's beloved grandson, Raven is able to indicate that he wants the boxes hanging up, so he first releases the stars and then the moon, and then this guy who seems to be just hanging out in the Sky Chief's house, sat against the wall, says in a very wise voice the most unwise thing, which is to give him the last box, and then Raven changes back into himself and carries the box away, back into the dark world, and it is of course the daylight. He releases the sun, and so everyone can see. I really like the hand/wing gestures in this animation. The way that he says his lines whilst doing these gestures is just perfect, especially the line, "You didn't see anything, you couldn't, it's too dark." And I think the screenplay is probably the strongest out of this series. The way that Matthew Hendrickson, the actor, says his lines is just perfect. And I love how the designs look like Pacific Northwestern totem poles. They've given him a best friend as well called Petrel in order for him to have someone to explain his plans to. In this version, the Sky Chief doesn't transform into an eagle and chase him like in some of the original versions. and Disney was actually planning to do a silly symphony in the 1930s of this exact tale, but it never came into being. I also really love the song. It's really catchy and is sung by Raven. My absolute favourite animation from this series is The Tree with the Golden Apples. Marika's father wants the 3 boys from next door to come over so he can tell them that he wants them to get a golden apple from a tree that's on a little island if they want to marry his daughter. He's sort of continuing the losing it because he's so old dad vibe, but then he legitimately gets out a golden apple that is clearly just sat in a box as a symbol of the love he had for his wife for years. Also, it seems like a kind of tradition rather than him just being annoying, but at the same time it is utterly obvious he should just let Marika choose Jan. I love how with all the small talk, Marika just breaks the facade when she hears there's only one boat. She full on panics and tells Jan to get to it pronto. The narrative helps you to really only root for Jan, since neither of his brothers are actually in love with Marika like he is. Instead, they both want to marry her so they'll inherit her father's mill. I like how the sentient wind thwarts Cornelius and Dirk in a suitable manner. Cornelius is large and thuggish, so the wind sweeps him up and lands him in a tree in a violent way. Dirk is thin and crafty, so the wind cleverly stops blowing and he starts to freeze. Because Dirk stole Jan's boat and then the wind broke it, Jan says he'll swim. He and Marika have a romantic evening on the bridge, and she says to him, "The water's freezing cold, and I don't want you to drown." Just the emphasis here makes me laugh every time, as if she thinks he doesn't actually know that she'd rather he didn't die. But fortunately, the wind freezes over the water for them, and he is able to ice skate to get the golden apple. So the dad's like, "Oh, you could get married now." And it's like, well, if you had any sense, they could have got married from the very start and not had this harrowing tale of him trying to get the apple. But I think the windmill being a central part of the story is very much Dutch. Like, my godmother is Dutch and she sends us parcels to remind us that Holland is a better country than England. And once there were Christmas decorations which was of a windmill and it was really sweet. There's a really beautiful duet of The Winds on the Wind, which is a song that initially Marika is singing to herself as she's making a picture of her and her future husband next to the golden tree. And I really like how the models are made after the style of the Dutch golden age of painting with 17th century rich oil paints of peasants. I'm a sucker for the stop motion animations that this company do, so I would also recommend the Greek myth of Persephone, where Demeter and Zeus are married to not have to deal with Zeus's multiple cheating on Hera in a children's animation, the Arabian tale The Crown and the Scepter, which teaches about the importance of generosity, and The Enchanted Lion, which stars the voice talents of Tara Fitzgerald and Tom Hollander. I grew up with the Chinese myth of the magic paintbrush, so I was really disappointed by the art style they went for in cell animation. I think it's trying to be like ancient Chinese scroll painting, but it just doesn't capture the beauty and minimalism of that era. Overall though, I really love this series and would recommend it to anyone who can get their hands on it. I'm sorry about my voice, I've had COVID so I'm not sounding great, but I hope to sound better in the next one.